We're continuing our visit to the Italian Riviera, staying in this charming little town of Santa Margherita, walking its narrow back streets. Some of these streets are for pedestrians only. They have some ancient piazzas and arcades and cloisters, very old terracotta buildings, beautiful pastel colors, and there's a Baroque church in town that's quite famous locally. These details are just painted on the buildings. It looks like it's carved and sculptured, but no, it's some trompe-l'oeil paintings to trick the eye. And in the heart of town, there's this very old Piazza Cavour. This is the old Italian style of architecture and town planning, where you have residences up on the second and third and fourth stories, and the ground floor you'll have shops and restaurants and perhaps some offices and parking spaces for your mopeds and Vespas. This style of architecture and town planning makes a lot of sense in a subtropical environment like this, for the arcades keep the sun off the pedestrians and also keep the rain off. It's too bad that the planners in Hawaii have never gotten smart to the utility of arcaded streets. But it's the old-fashioned Italian way, and the little piazza with the buildings around it are the focal point of the town. A little statue to honor Cavour, who was one of the revolutionary heroes of the mid-19th century. And then along the waterfront promenade, there are several other parks with greenery. This park is in honor of Christopher Columbus, who stands at the top of his pedestal. More of these painted details, these trompe-l'oeil trick-the-eye effects. It's not carvings, it's just painted on the buildings. Santa Margherita Ligure is a very active coastal town. There's a big yacht basin, as you see here. A lot of fishing boats and sleek racing boats. Water skiing's real popular here. Big sailboats, and fishing, of course, is very popular. And another active thing you can do on the water is take the boat from Santa Margherita into the tiny resort town of Portofino, as we're doing here today. You can go by bus. It's only 3 or 4 miles from one town to the next, and the public bus will take you there in about 10 or 15 minutes for 80 cents. Or better yet, go by boat. It takes 10 minutes longer, and it costs a few dollars more, but this is really an exciting way to travel. This is living life to the hilt, enjoying the beautiful scenery from the water. You see some of the hilltop castles, and there's a Hotel Splendido looking over the little town of Portofino as we round the bend, passing one of the landmark houses on the promontory, and come into the tiny harbor of Portofino itself. This world-famous resort is popular for its scenic beauty, its tranquil pleasures, its delicious cuisine, and especially the charming architecture of these pastel-painted little houses lining the bay. Small village by the sea, the little harbor well known to tourists from all over the world, even from as far away as Hawaii. And here's the boat that took us there. There's a variety of types of boats that ply back and forth between Santa Margherita and Portofino. The name of this town is of uncertain origin, but it may refer back to the Roman days when it was called Portus Delphini, and that means Port of the Dolphin. There's still an abundance of sea life in the harbor here. As we get off the ferry boat that took us from Santa Margherita, it's interesting to reflect upon the history of the area. It makes you appreciate the sights that much more, especially when you realize that this small cove has probably been continuously occupied for over 2,000 years, starting from before the Roman days. As far back as the 6th and 5th centuries BC, Ligurians lived here who were merchants and fishermen and traders, and they extended their influence by establishing relations with the Carthaginians and forming settlements all along the Riviera, which flourished and prospered. Thus, when Hannibal waged war against Rome, the people who lived in this area sided with Hannibal and against the Romans. And today you still see some of the ancient crafts still practiced, perhaps as it was done 2,000 years ago. Fishing, fixing the nets, repairing the furniture, living life in the old world style. This is why people flock in droves to Portofino, and that's why it gets pretty crowded in the summertime too, to enjoy authentic sights like this. We traveled here in late March and early April. It's best to go in the off-season, the spring or the fall. Late September is equally beautiful. It never gets very cold here, so even in the midst of the winter, it's pretty nice. Although in December and January, many of the little stores and restaurants close down for the winter season. Aside from December and January, it's a fine resort all year round. Portofino does get super crowded in July and August, so those 2 months are best to avoid. Otherwise, come anytime and you'll find our friend here fixing his fishing net, harking back to the days of old. The Roman Empire did succeed in gaining control over this area, of course. By the year 200 BC, the Romans were victorious, and from here the Romans mounted a protracted but vigorous campaign against little hotbeds of resistance. But in time, the Romans colonized all of Liguria and founded a very rich state here. Roman remains have recently been unearthed and are in the process of being housed and classified. Even the mundane details of everyday life can take on a special beauty when you're from a different culture. Looking at it with the eyes of a foreigner, everything seems quite exotic and quite wonderful. Even to our little white friend here, things in the boat look very attractive. Perhaps he smells a hint of a luncheon of fish, some leftover fish perhaps. This wharfmonger shows a lot of interest in the odors coming out of this old fishing boat and its pile of nets. Well, he's a regular here on the docks, and you'll find him any day when you go down to Portofino, and you can greet him and scratch him behind the ears for us. A view of the main part of the harbor and the boat ramp. This place is lined with restaurants and shops, and there's about 1,000 people who live here at the peak of the season, and even less in the off-season. There's one of the many kinds of boats that will take you up and down the coastline. Great place for sitting back and relaxing. Looks a little nippy there. The temperatures actually were very comfortable in the high 50s and low 60s in late March. And during the summertime, it'll go up into the high 80s and low 90s. But it's a very pleasant temperature all year round here in Liguria and Portofino. And everybody's friendly here, especially in a small town like this. It has a real feeling of being at home. Even though you might have never been here before, you're going to feel very comfortable and welcomed. Everything's so mellow here, this cat's not even concerned about the dog that's about to walk past him. It's a place where people will stop and spend some time chatting with each other, even the cats. Here's a cat up above talking to his friend down below. Looks like Romeo and Julie cat. People in Italy love to talk. Everywhere you hear the music of conversation and the beautiful sights. Let's just sit back and relax for a minute here and enjoy some of these great sights of the city and listen to some Italian music. We're standing in the beautiful village of Portofino. We're on the Ligurian coast in the Italian Riviera, one of the most beautiful places in the entire world. Portofino has kept unsullied all the characteristics of an ancient seaport because of the love of the locals for their village and because they have stood out against modernization and the ravages of modern housing development. The Ligurians have always relied upon the water for fishing as well as trade, and for many hundreds of years they've had vast overseas connections throughout the Mediterranean, in particular close relationships with Corsica and Sardinia, and with parts of northern Africa as well. The cliffs march boldly and dramatically down to the sea, colorful lichens and mosses, cypresses clinging to cracks and crannies in the rocks, and the light reflecting off the water, all coalesced into a hypnotic whole that puts you at ease, and you could sit back for hours if not days, and just relax and enjoy these sights. It's a popular spot. People love to have their photographs taken with the little town in the background, as seen from the small hill by the church overlooking the village of Portofino. Again, this time of year wasn't too crowded. That was the only small group that came through town all day, in fact. One group of high school kids in a bus, and they were gone in a half hour, leaving the whole town to ourselves, which we jealously possessed and guarded, and thought how unfortunate to come in July or August when it would be just packed with people. Stately row of buildings marching along by the side of the hill at the dock, pastel-colored. Most of the building fronts only 2 windows or 3 windows wide. This continuous palisade which surrounds the small port includes the little square, the heart of the village. Many foreigners stop here enchanted, and the square has become, as it were, an elegant and cosmopolitan salon. We see a happy blend of this built-up area and the natural countryside around it. When you turn and look from the other side of this hill with a view, you see the open waters of the Mediterranean, bounded by a rocky cliff with the Church of St. George atop it, bombed flat during the war and since rebuilt. This church on the other side of town is San Martino. It has a very elegant Genoese Baroque interior. It's been renovated recently, so the gold is all glistening. The marble columns are polished and shining. There's a functioning chandelier made of crystal. You see these Corinthian capitals to these ancient columns. This church is just right in the heart of the little village. You can't miss it. And it's really worth a little side trip. And then you step right out the door and you're back in the town square. View of the rooftops and the little palace-type houses and mansions of this town of Portofino. You have a walk up the hill to the Hotel Splendido. These are the garden grounds of the hotel. It's open to the public. You're welcome to have a stroll up their pathway, and just like the walk up the other side of the hill, it's not strenuous at all. It's very pleasant. You get a great view of the little harbor down below and the interesting vegetation, and it's very safe and convenient. And at the top, you'll reach the Hotel Splendido, where they have an open terrace. You could have a meal if you wish to, or just enjoy a leisurely drink from the terrace promenade. So this was our goal and our intention as we walked up to the hotel. We'd heard so much about it. It's got a worldwide reputation, especially since it's been purchased and revamped by the same chain that launched the Orient Express, the deluxe train tour. There's stout colonnades that support the rampant vines that shade a vast terrace up on top, dominating the bay. However, when we got to the top, we found the hotel had not yet opened for the season. It doesn't open until early April, and we were just a week or two too early. So all we could do was look at the beautiful facade of the Hotel Splendido and wait till we come back the next time to go up there for a drink. At least you can enjoy the view. The view is always there and available. Across the harbor, you see the castle on top of the other hill and some of the yachts at anchor in their moorings. You can see why it's so lovable. We're just wrapping up our beautiful day in Portofino. We started here about 8 in the morning, and now it's about 6:30 in the evening. And we've spent the whole day in this little tiny village. There's just so much to see. There's the walks, the views from both sides, the Hotel Splendido. There's lunch, and then you can have dinner, snacks, sit down for a drink, have some coffee, and most of all, admire the view of these incredible buildings behind me.